There you go. Yay! So I'm Jennifer Hammond, and this is Shawn Yesner. He is a real estate attorney, and he's been doing this for 24 years. He's down here in the Tampa, Clearwater, Florida area. And I wanted to make sure that if you had questions, especially about real estate, I want to say some of the tougher parts about real estate that are being talked about now, the big R word, recession, is happening out there. People are worried about short sales and foreclosures and bankruptcies. So first of all, welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's such a pleasure to have you. And I want to make sure people know that also Shawn has a podcast called Crushing Debt. And Oh my gosh, let's talk about short sales, foreclosures, bankruptcies. What is your prediction of the crystal ball of what's going to happen? We're at the very end of 2022, but what do you think is going to happen next year?
So I don't think we're going to have anywhere near the volume of short sales that we had in the crash, in the Great Recession in 2008 to 2014. I think property values have held or have increased a little bit. I predict something that I've been calling forced sales. So a homeowner who's in a position where they can't afford to make their payments, but there's equity in the house. So let's sell it, cash out the equity, and then use that money for whatever, getting out of debt, finding an apartment, buying a cheaper house, whatever it might be. That's what I think is going to happen. Not the short sales, but more forced sales, for lack of a better word.
Yep. And I think it's really important for people to know that there are different alternatives. If you end up finding yourself into a lot of debt, obviously, just like the name of your podcast, what kind of advice would you give for somebody who seems like they're starting? And again, I hate to say, I've seen some numbers on people losing jobs recently. And I think next year there's some people who are going to be a little bit afraid of, they just have crushing debt and they're afraid of what's going to happen next. What advice would you have for them?
I think the first thing I would say is call your bank, call your credit card company, tell them what's going on. They may or may not be able to help, but it's worth a 5-minute phone call. They're not going to say, no, we can't help you and we're suing you for $1 million. They're going to say, yes, we can help you, or no, we can't. That's really all that's going to happen. So the first step I would say is to call the bank. If the bank doesn't get you anywhere, the credit card company doesn't get you anywhere, I give a free consultation. I believe all or almost all of the attorneys that do what I do give free consultations. So Reach out and give one of us a call and we'll sit down and talk for whatever, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever. And we'll go through all of the options, settling it, bankrupting it. There are some situations I tell clients, hey, if you got a thick enough skin, the bank's not gonna be able to take anything from you. Just ride it out. You've got nothing the bank can take, so don't worry about it. But everybody's situation is different. So we'll kick it around for a little bit and we'll figure out what's the best option for you.
And I think that's so important. I often say that it's just like a fingerprint. Everybody's situation is so uniquely different. So I highly recommend giving someone like Shawn, especially if you're in the state of Florida, you should be calling Shawn Yesner and ask the question. We're always interested in helping you, but I think that a lot of times people don't know what the options are out there, which is one of the reasons I wanted to bring up, even though short sales really aren't happening as much, especially not in the state of Florida, but foreclosures or bankruptcy and you had mentioned, again, I highly recommend you go back and listen to the podcast. I just interviewed Shawn on the podcast. But in the meantime, one thing that you kind of alluded to that I think is so important for people is to look at all of the alternatives, because you might not know what are the possible solutions for you in your situation. You referenced about, like, if somebody all of a sudden won the lottery today, everybody's been talking about the lottery of being $1 billion, but say all of a sudden you got an inheritance or you won the lottery for $100,000, but you have $100,000 of debt.
So the first thing I would do is we just interviewed last week's episode. It's episode 344. We interviewed an attorney on the podcast that does asset protection. So there may be certain things, talk to your financial advisor, talk to an attorney. There may be things where you could put that money and protect it from creditors. But if that's not possible, I'll never lie to a creditor, but I don't mind bluffing every once in a while. So maybe, we can talk to a creditor about settling the debt for 20 cents on the dollar, 40 cents on the dollar, 60 cents. Even 60 cents on the dollar is better than everything that's owed. So a lot of times we can stretch it out over payments. So there's a lot of different things we can do to help make that debt a little bit more manageable.
And now we've been talking about all the negatives, but quickly, let's talk just for a minute, real fast. With your practice, you really do go over a lot of different things because you have commercial real estate. You also work with a lot of different areas, landlord representation. I think a lot of things that, again, all the different aspects of real estate law, right?
Yeah, the only thing I don't do anymore is closings, but I started doing closing. So I've got a ton of closing and title experience, but that's really the only piece that the law firm doesn't do. I have some great relationships with some local title companies that I can refer to. But other than that, yeah, landlord tenant issues, foreclosure issues, both for private individuals that loan money and for borrowers, quiet title lawsuits, partition lawsuits, which are so partition, the best example of a partition, mom and dad die, leave the house to brother and sister. Brother says, cool, I get to live in this house for free. It's where mom and dad lived. And sister says, wait a minute, it's my inheritance. I want to cash out. And so they start fighting over it. So we've handled those kinds of lawsuits, pretty much not realtor disputes, but buyer seller disputes. So seller says, buyer, you shouldn't have canceled. Buyer says, yeah, I have every reason to cancel this contract. We've done a lot of those. So pretty much any kind of litigation that involves real estate, we can help with.
Perfect. And I just put up your website on the screen, yesnerlaw.com. And make sure you also look up your podcast is Crushing Debt, correct?
Right. It's available Apple, Spotify, everywhere YouTube, everywhere you listen to your favorite show, Crushing Debt will be there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Shawn, for being here. And as I say, let's go off the air with a quick yay. And thank you so much for being with us. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. 3, 2, 1. Yay!
Yay!
We are